Welcome everyone to this celebration of Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo. Oh, this is already recording, huh? Okay, good. Excellent. All right. This was initially just thought to be something that would be held for the Australian Sangha, but I'm very grateful to Tony Whittaker who put this on the global, and so so now there's a few of us who are going to be watching this and joining in, and there's really, you could say, there's nothing not to like about what we're doing today, in the sense of recollecting the life of someone like Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo. And I'd like, first of all, to dedicate this to the present incarnation of Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo, Songsa Jamyang Khyentse Rinpoche, who very much, just like Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo, has succeeded in reaching so many beings, benefiting the Buddhist teaching and sentient beings in such a vast, to such a vast extent. What I'm intending to do with this program here is really just briefly go over the life of Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo, talk a little bit about him, and his life, and also what you could say some of the significant events in the life of Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo, and then also speak a little bit about how the activities of Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo have impacted down to the present day, and how we could say his legacy still is present. And so I'm going to be referring to, at one point, to Dalma Gunther, who will just say a few words on something called the Khyentse Vision project, which is being launched today, really on the auspicious occasion of Khyentse Wangpo's anniversary. All right, so I think we're good now. Yeah. Is everybody seeing the Tsongsa monastery there? Okay, good. All right. Now there's a significant part of us, and Tsongsa Khyentse Rinpoche, he was talking about this the other day in the context of the Tri Ratna Sadhana. There's a significant aspect of what we practice when we recollect somebody in the Buddhist teaching. Rinpoche was saying, in recollecting the three jewels, for example, it's not really like we're sentimental and we're nostalgic and we're thinking of the Buddha, or in this case of Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo. The point is more that with the practice of recollecting such a great being, which is taking place in the present, we're not really invoking anything from the past, in the sense that the past actually, you could sort of say, actually the past doesn't exist. From the, you could say, an analytical perspective, the past has never existed. Nobody has ever seen the past. And so to, as we have it in Madhyamika reasoning, to assume that there's an existing present on the basis of a non-existent past is sort of a slightly absurd idea. But nevertheless, we do operate within our deluded condition, our relative experience of samsara, a conventional, a relative experience where we, due to our delusion, we think in terms of time. And that's where we then have the condition of samsara, where we think in terms of past, present, future, we think in terms of cause and effect. And of course, in that context, then we operate with a conventional sense of past. And so we will be speaking in terms of, you could say, a certain degree of historicity. Khyentse Wangpo was born on the 10th day of the Sagadawa, the 4th month, and so forth. And we're going to be discussing everything that he did in his life. But the thing is, invoking this is not really a way of us, you could say, self-aggrandizing our own tradition or something about us dwelling on the past and so forth. It's really just a way of connecting with what is immediate, namely this unconditioned clarity. You could say the inner Buddha, what we are uncovering on the path. This nature of wisdom that is endowed with all the qualities of enlightenment. And so when we recollect the Buddha, when we recollect Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo, we're doing so really to connect with this unconditional aspect that abides within. Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo and the Buddha never wanted to be adored. They only wanted us to understand one thing, and that is this unconfused, untainted condition that's not wandering in samsara. So their very appearance in this world is entirely based on the compassion, the enlightened compassion that wishes to free sentient beings. So, of course, in the Buddhist history, we do operate with some degree of historicity and so forth, but at the same time, it's really seen as somewhat secondary, and the real purpose of reading the lives of the masters of the past and so on is really connect with their compassion. We would say if the student's devotion is there, then the unconditional compassion of the Buddhas will connect. And so we have this, what we call blessing. That's where blessing can enter. So on the basis of us celebrating Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo, there's the possibility that something extraordinary happens in terms of blessing. So that's where we very much do celebrate the life of the Buddha, the life of the great sages, and so forth. If you have the Rigpa calendar, you know there's a lot of anniversaries, and so all of that is essentially just to provide the condition for the blessing and the freeing of the condition of sentient beings. So that's why it's important for us to, well, there's a lot of value in what we're doing here today. So just recollecting the life and legacy of Khyentse Wangpo. Of course, I'd like to say that I'll try to do justice to this. There's someone like Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo, of course, and this is always in the preface of all life stories. This will only be a drop in the ocean. But I'll make some references to some of the places that you can read more about Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo, resources and so on. Okay, so basically on the note of devotion, before we start, I'd just like to supplicate Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo. Let's just see if this works. Are you seeing Khyentse Wangpo's image? And hold on, I might have to just redo this. Okay, I hope you're seeing Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo's image, and good, excellent, and also the prayer. Yeah, good. So we'll just begin with supplication. So, emanation of Vimalamitra, blessed by Manjusri, 13th incarnation of Lhaje the Prince, Pema Dongrak Lingpa, holder of the 7 transmissions, Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo, to you I pray. Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo, think of me. Look upon me from the wisdom realm of the 2 kinds of knowing. Help me to remove the obscurations of my ignorance and expand the vision of supreme knowledge. Wurzel Tulpe Dorje, think of me. Look upon me from the realm of the 5 rainbow lights. Help me to cleanse the impurities of Bindu, Prana, and mind, and attain enlightenment of this youthful Kaya in the vase. Pema Dongrak Lingpa, think of me. Look upon me from the unchanging realm of bliss and emptiness. Enable me to completely fulfill all the intentions of the victorious ones and their sons. So the first 4 lines, some of you will recognize from the general lineage prayer, and the other one is from the Nalanda Translation Committee, a translation of Crying to the Gurus from Afar, the Lama Gyangpo, that was composed by Jamyang Khyentse Lotus. So Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo, also then known as Wurzel Tulpe Dorje, was born in 1820. He was born on the what we call Tsichu, the 10th day of the waxing moon, and he was born in this place called Dilgo, near Dage. Now it's in a place called Tilgo, in a place called Talung. So maybe some of you know this, but I was a little bit curious whether this is what, when we refer, for example, to Tilgo Khyentse Rinpoche, if it's the same Tilgo, because Tilgo really just means hilltop. And Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche, he was from a place called Dengkok, so it might not be the same. But either way, similarly to Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche, then Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo's family was aristocratic, and the father had a role in the King of Dage's court. Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo's father apparently had initially intended to become a monk, but the first Drudupchen, Jigme Trungpa Lhasa, had said to him, "Please don't become a monk. I sense that you will be, if you remain a layman, there will be a great incarnation born in your family." So Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo then was born, and it's said that in his early years, then there was continually the sense of the protectors around him, Ekajati and Mahakala. And it's also said that from a very early age, there was a lot of indications that he had a noble disposition, that he was someone who wished to take ordination and follow the Buddha's path. There's not really, I couldn't find any particular details, probably in the longer version of Khyentse Wangpo's life by Jamgun Kongtrul Lodutai, which is very capably translated by Matthew Ackister. There might be some details. But anyway, what's significant is then that Khyentse Wangpo, early on, he had many recollections of previous lives. In fact, if we look at the rosary of lives of Jamyang Khyentse Chukyi Lodro, there's something like 79 different lives that are enumerated. But when we generally talk about Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo, we talk about him being the 13th incarnation of, I think it's King Trisong Detsen's son or grandson, Prince Laje. And anyway, in these 13 lives, then Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo was always a treasure revealer. And also, we would say when we talk about Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo, and when we refer to him in terms of his treasure revealer name, Pema Dongak Lingpa, he was the fifth of what we call the 5 Tibetan kings. So we have Nyangral Nyimawasa and Guru Chowang and Pema Lingpa and Dorje Lingpa, and then the fifth then being Pema Dongak Lingpa, Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo. These were the greatest, you could say, of all the treasure revealers, or they certainly were referred to in the prophecies as the great 5 Tibetan kings. So Khyentse Wangpo had an unusual childhood in terms of these continual recollections and visions and so forth. And particularly when he was 8 years old, it said that he was seriously ill. And in the context of his illness, he had a vision of Guru Padmasambhava, Guru Rinpoche, and Yeshe Tsogyal, who gave him the Vajrakilaya empowerment and completely cured him, and also prophesied that on the basis of this empowerment, he would always be victorious in relation to obstacles and so forth. When Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo was 11, then a Katok monastery, Katok Mokse, or Katok Mokten, recognized him as the incarnation of Jigme Lingpa. We have actually 3 incarnations of Jigme Lingpa. We have Dokhenze Yeshe Dorje, and we have Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo, and we also have Paltru Rinpoche. So I think we say that Dokhenze Yeshe Dorje was the body incarnation, Khyentse Wangpo was the speech incarnation, and or what we know, Paltro Rinpoche was the speech incarnation and Khyentse Wangpo was the mind incarnation. So anyway, he was recognized as that, and also he was recognized by a great Sakya master called Tatse Khenpo, who gave him the name Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo. He recognized him as a great incarnation of a Sakya master. And so Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo then, at the age of 15, it said that he had this vision in which he traveled to Bodh Gaya, and if you've been to Bodh Gaya, you know you can go upstairs. And in the story, it tells about him going upstairs of the Mahabodhi temple, and he encountered Manjushri Mitra, Jambal Shinyan, and he went before Jambal Shinyan, who he bowed to, and then Jambal Shinyan gave him 2 works. One was the compendium of the Prajnaparamita, and prophesied, he said, on the basis of this, you will be a master of all the sutra teachings. And then he gave him, he blessed him with a book and gave him a book called the Doji Simba Nyingi Melong, the heart mirror of Vajrasattva Tantra. And he then prophesied Khyentse Wangpo would become the master of all the mantra teachings. And Khyentse Wangpo then withdrew. And as he walked out the door, there was this great fire that consumed him. And Khyentse Wangpo thought, I am Vimala Mitra. And so from then on, there was this awareness of his previous incarnation as Vimala Mitra. It's then said that when he was 16, then, and as far as I remember, I might be wrong, but I seem to remember also there at that point he was sick, or he was almost like gone. I'm not sure if we refer to Khyentse Wangpo as a delog, but anyway, Khyentse Wangpo in this vision when he was 16, he went to the copper-colored mountain, and there he encountered Guru Rinpoche and Yeshe Tsogyal, and it said that Guru Rinpoche spoke to him at that point, and First time I heard this story was actually from Tuku Pema Wangyal. And Tuku Pema Wangyal at this point paused, and he wrote down what Guru Rinpoche said to Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo in this vision, which is in Tibetan, Sungwe Yulgi Magoshin, Zinbe Togwe Malepa Ritong Jemba Chongwane Sanje Kungi Gomba O, which roughly means not tainted by the appearing object and not corrupted by the internal subjective concepts. Sustaining this naked awareness is the wisdom of all the Buddhas. And it said then that Khyentse Wangpo, following this, had complete recognition of the nature of mind, and also from then on stayed on in Sankdoperi and received teachings for quite some duration. And we say he received actually all the various Karma teachings, both of the new and the old translation traditions from Guru Rinpoche and Yeshe Tsogyal. And then Dusha Rinpoche writes, from that time onwards, then Khyentse Wangpo would always direct his prayers to Guru Rinpoche. It was also around this time, and also I'm sorry I can't remember the story. I remember Ujin Topya once told this story, but he had a vision, and Ujin Topya tells the story in quite some detail, but he had a vision of Tangtong Gyalpo. And it's also on the basis of this vision that Khyentse Wangpo later established this treasure cycle called the Druptop Tuktik, which is based on the teachings on Tangtong Gyalpo and the teachings of Tangtong Gyalpo. When he was 20, Khyentse Wangpo traveled to central Tibet, and no, actually I should say before that, sorry, getting ahead of myself there. When he was 19, when he was 19, he began studies with his main Nyingtik teacher, the teacher who granted him the main Dzogchen transmissions, was Jigme Gyalwe Nyugo. And Jigme Gyalwe Nyugo was also the teacher of Paltro Rinpoche. And Nyushi Khenpo, he writes that these were like the sun and the moon. Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo was like the sun and Paltro Rinpoche was like the moon. These were the two main students of Jigme Gyaltsen Nyugo, who was the student of Jigme Lingpa's main student, Jigme Trinle Wurzel. No, that's not right. Jigme Gyaltsen Nyugo was a direct student of Jigme Lingpa. That's right. Yeah. So anyway, Khyentse Wangpo received all the Longchen Nyingtik transmissions and teachings, pith instructions from Jigme Gyaltsen Nyugo. And it was also at this time then that he received a special pointing out to the nature of mind by somebody called Lama Norbu, who was a student then of the first Dorupchen, Jigme Trinle. And later Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo would say that on the basis of this pointing out, his realization had never changed in the slightest. So this was also very significant. Now, following that, then Khyentse Wangpo traveled to central Tibet, and he traveled there to receive ordination at the Mindraling Monastery. And at the Mindraling Monastery, then he received full ordination, and he also received the Bodhisattva vows. And particularly with regards to the transmission of the Nyingtik, he received what's called the four sections of the Nyingtik, or the 4 sections of the heart essence, the Nyingtik Yashi. He received this from the great Mindraling Jetsunma. Some of you are familiar with Khandro Rinpoche, and this would be one of the previous then Khandro Rinpoches, in the sense of this being the daughter of the throne holder of Mindraling. But this was a very great Dzogchen master, and she then bestowed these very important Nyingtik Yashi 4 sections of the heart essence upon Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo. So Khyentse Wangpo received full ordination as a monk. He received Bodhisattva vow, and he received also Vajrayana teachings or Vajrayana transmissions from Mindraling Jetsunma. But on the way to central Tibet, and throughout his travels in central Tibet, he actually took out what we call earth treasures on the way. And some of the earth treasures, including the Semnying also, the Chenrezi cycle of teachings, Dzogchen Nyingtik, and so forth, he actually took from various places in central Tibet on his way to Mindraling. He stayed in central Tibet for some time, traveled around, made pilgrimage. It's said that when Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo went to the Jokang, the central cathedral of Lhasa, and offered rice, it said that when he offered rice, then the rice turned into flowers. And there would be a lot of stories about that. But particularly significant is, as he was traveling in central Tibet, he came to a valley not so far from Lhasa called Uyuklung. And at that time, as he was entering this valley, all ordinary perceptions, they fell away. And Khyentse Wangpo remembered his previous life as Chetsin Singye Wangchuk. And it was at that moment when Chetsin Singye Wangchuk took the rainbow body that he was requested by the Dakini Palgi Lodrima to essentially teach everything that he had ever received from his master, which was Vimala Mitra. And Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo then, on the basis of this clear recollection at that moment, then finding himself essentially at that moment in his previous life as Chetsin Singye Wangchuk, then he established what we call the Chetsin Nyingtik, the heart essence of Chetsin. And with that teaching, we also have what's known as the Vima Saptik. This is essentially then, you could say, Vimala Mitra's particular pith instructions to Chetsin Singye Wangchuk. So this comes down to the present day from Khyentse Wangpo on the basis of this vision that he had at that time. He then returned to Kham and he studied at Shichen Monastery. And Dunjum Rinpoche and also Nyoshu Khenpo echoes this in his life story, speaks about how Khyentse Wangpo didn't just attend all these teachings. He studied all the important sciences, the 5 outer, the 5 inner. He studied Madhyamika, Pramana, and so on. But he didn't just do this in a sort of sense to just have he received these, but he really went into the depth of understanding these teachings. And so he studied at Shichen for some years. He also studied at Tsongsa. And then when he was 29, he again went back to central Tibet and received more teachings. And we say that Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo received teachings from 150 different great masters. And we say that in the course of walking around central Tibet, he wore out 55 pairs of boots. And it's also said that he essentially received something like 700 volumes of teachings. And not only receiving them, but then in the course of his life, then he passed all of these on to students at least once. Some of them he would have passed on many times. It was at the age of 35 then. And of course, what happens in the life of Khyentse Wangpo is that he's continually either receiving teachings in visions or discovering treasures in one way or another. But it was at the age of 35 that Khyentse Wangpo then received the Chime Pama Nyingtik. He was practicing White Tara, and on the basis of that, then he had a vision of Chime Pama and received the complete transmissions to that. Also at that time, Khyentse Wangpo practiced the Sakya Vajrayogini, and it was on the basis of that we say that he then all ordinary perceptions vanished, and he exclusively experienced all phenomenal appearances in terms of a mandala. So and then at the age of 40, we say that he had this very significant vision in which he saw all what we call the 1,000 Tatons, all the various treasure revealers in Tibet, and basically knew all their teachings. So in this sense, we understand that Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo knew pretty much every, well, not pretty much, but he knew all the treasure teachings that ever existed in Tibet. It's often that we hear then that Khyentse Wangpo retired at the age of 37 to the Sakya monastery, Tsongsa. And very often we actually refer to Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo as Tsongsa Khyentse. This can of course be confusing because very often we think of Tsongsa Khyentse in terms of the present third Khyentse Wangpo, Tupen Chökyi Gyatso, who's our teacher, presently with us, or maybe the previous one, Chökyi Lodre. But the first Khyentse also was referred to as Tsongsa Khyentse, as this was his residence. And we sometimes read that he took a vow at the age of 37 to never cross the threshold of his door. So we would basically say Khyentse Wangpo was in retreat for the rest of his life. However, if we do look at some of the narratives, for example, his work with Chögyi Lingpa, it seems that Khyentse Wangpo somehow was outside and doing things at other times. But in principle, Khyentse Wangpo stayed then at Tsongsa for the rest of from he was 37 and onwards. It's said that Khyentse Wangpo, in receiving all these various transmissions, he practiced all of them. So this is an enormous amount of teachings that he put into practice. And we also say that he continually was, in addition to practicing, he was continually engaged in writing and teaching and working with other great masters. So a bit like if we look at the life of Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo, you'd think if you look at everything he had written, that he could have done nothing except just compose. If we look at all the practice that he did, you think he had done nothing except practice all his life, and so forth. If we look at all the enlightened activities, you could say he wouldn't have been doing anything. But anyway, the life of Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo reflects just an enormous, you could say, display of enlightened qualities. As far as his essential practice goes, Dinghu Chinsa Rinpoche would say that the main practice was the Guru Yoga from the Longchen Nyingtik, the practice of Guru Rinpoche. I want to read you something from Jigme Tempe Nyima, and I'm assuming, since I'm sharing the screen, that this will appear. Someone can just a little bit. Can you confirm that you're actually seeing the text of? This is a text then where it says the third Dorupchen. Yeah, I'm seeing it. Brilliant. Thank you very much. Okay. So just want to read something from the third Dorupchen, Jigme Tempe Nyima, and who describes meeting Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo. So he says, wherever he lived, a very strong, sweet sense always filled the surroundings, which was believed to be the sign of his strict monastic discipline. Even a movement of his fingers was inspiring and meaningful, and people became powerless not to appreciate every gesture he made. Wherever he lived, you would feel a pleasant heat, as if from a fire in the cold. Numerous people saw him in different forms of Buddhas or early masters. Whatever the season, people in his presence always had the feeling of being in the joy and prosperity of summer. He was exceptionally caring of poor people and spoke to them very gently. Arrogant and cruel people, who were known to be as brave men, would run from him without looking back, like escapees, or would submit as if their heads were falling off. Before him, every great master or powerful person became insignificant and humble. He was humble, honest, and kind. He was skilled in both dharmic and secular ethical values. Before him, no one dared to express flattering or deceptive words. He taught all kinds of assemblies with great confidence, like a lion among other animals. In the midst of hosts of disciples, he was simple and harmonious with all, and he spoke at the right moment and for the right length of time. His reasoning mind was swift like a river coursing down a steep mountain. His voice would fill the atmosphere as if it were the waves of the ocean. Sometimes he thought, without caring to eat his meal. Because of the rush of disciples and the load of teachings, visitors sometimes had to wait weeks or even months to see him, but everyone felt joy in waiting for him. And then there was also just something from Junjun Rinpoche, who I want to read. Junjun Rinpoche writes, in order to reveal the career of one who did not belittle the doctrine, Khyentse Wangpo did not abandon all the doctrines, having merely studied them, but trained and cultivated himself in them to the limits, whereby he came to possess the unclouded eye of the doctrine. So it was that he knew in detail and without adulteration the essential points of the view, conduct, and assertions of each philosophical system, whether or not their respective traditions and customs were free from deviation and so forth. During the present day, there is no one, high or low, with whom he might be compared. So we say that Khyentse Wangpo was someone who mastered what we call the 10 pillars of explanation, so the 10 lineages of explanation. And also we say that he was a master of the 8 lineages of practice. And it's on the basis of that, this incredible vastness of knowledge, that we regard Khyentse Wangpo as founder of the Rimé tradition. Sometimes when we talk about the Rimé, we attribute it to Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo justifiably if we look at what he did. However, the notion of the Rimé movement was not entirely new. We have great masters like Gyurme Tsewan, Chogdrup, and even Jigme Lingpa and so forth, that actually worked hard in order to, you could say, create a cohesive vision of how all the various traditions of Tibet were united in a single intention. And also, what is important when we understand the Rimé tradition, which many lamas have emphasized, is that it's not that we just have one big synthesis of all the teachings and it's all just one, but it's more that all the different traditions, which each have their own, you could say, speciality, they lead to complete perfect awakening. But they all have their specific methods, and these should be practiced according to their own, you could say, premises, their own view and practice. But they all are equally valid in leading everyone to enlightenment. So we have, for example, the 8 practice lineages, which is the Nyingma, the teachings from Guru Padmasambhava, Trisong Detsen, and Shantrakshita. And then we have the Kadampas from Atisha. Then we have the Sakyapas from the 5 great Sakya masters. And then we have the Kagyu tradition. There we have 2 traditions actually. We have the tradition that was brought to Tibet by Mapa the translator. And then we also have the Shangpa Kagyu, which was brought to Tibet by Khyumpo Naljor. So we have what we call sometimes Mapa Kagyu and Shangpa Kagyu. And then we have the Shije and the Chö tradition, which come from Machi Glabdron and Padamba Sanje. And then we have the tradition of the Jonangpas, which are the traditions of which are then the teachings on the Kala Chakra. And then finally we have the teachings on the Dojin Nyendrup, which is the teaching from Ujinpa on the 3 Vajras in conjunction with the practice of Vajrayogini. So we have these 8 lineages of practice. Of course, generally we talk about 4 traditions, the Kagyu, Nyingma, Sakya, and Gelug. But in terms of lineages of practice, we have these 8. You actually have a really great work on this by Ringo Tuku, who talks about then these remade traditions. But this is essentially was, you could say, systematized, brought together by Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo in conjunction with his work with Jamgon Kongtrul. Of course, today we're talking about Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo, but equally we recognize the incredible value of the Rimé work in view of what Jamgon Kongtrul did. We sometimes would say that Khyentse Wangpo collected all these teachings, but it was Kongtrul who actually, you could say, on the basis of Khyentse Wangpo's teaching, then put all these down into writing. So we have these amazing collections from Jamgon Kongtrul on the various sort of transmissions of teachings in the various traditions. Khyentse Wangpo had one particular vision, actually. Let's see if I can find it here. Which was known as the Fivefold Vision. No. And Dinghu Chensa Rinpoche, actually in Brilliant Moon, he describes this vision in which one day Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo, he found himself in South India and together with some other masters. And this particular vision is referred to as the Fivefold Vision. So I hope you can all see it there. And this is Khyentse Wangpo as a Heruka riding you could say, the mount of Manjushri. And together with then down on a white elephant here, we have Rigpe Dorje, or Gyaltse Shenpen, a great Nyingma master. Someone called Losel Tenkyong, a great master of the Sakya tradition. Jamyang Khyentse over here riding a dragon, great master of the Kagyu tradition. And then Chögye Dechen Lingpa on a tiger, great master of the Nyingma tradition. So, so this is known as the Fivefold Vision, and it's interesting that Dinghu Chense Rinpoche later, actually, on the basis of this, established a cycle of teachings which he then taught in Tibet. This was unfortunately lost, most of it, but he remembered some of it, and he wrote down something which, on the basis of that, which we then have something called the Heruka Chingye Nyingti, the heart essence of the 5 Heruka brothers, which he completed on his first journey to the West, incidentally at the Shambhala Center in Berkeley, California. So this particular vision then also is the basis for some of the teachings that we have, or the practices that we have from Khyentse Chögye Lodro, also in a Heruka aspect, and also Dinghu Chense Rinpoche similarly. As far as Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo's treasure teaching goes, we talk about 7 different transmissions that Khyentse Wangpo had. The first is then what we call karma. Let me just see here. The first is called karma, and we say this Khyentse Wangpo. We see actually what in the first encounter with, well, not the first encounter probably, but anyway, in the vision that Khyentse Wangpo had when he was 16 and traveled to the copper-colored mountain, Khyentse Wangpo prophesied, and Guru Rinpoche prophesied that Khyentse Wangpo would become holder of what we call 7 transmissions. And there's actually only 2 masters who held these 7 transmissions. There was himself and Chögye Lingpa. So I'm just going to go over what these 7 transmissions are. And the first is then what we call karma, which is essentially the oral lineage. Now, the Nyingma lineage in general, and by the way, let's actually let's just emphasize the paradox that as much as we're talking about Khyentse Wangpo as a Nyingma master, and this might possibly be due to my own Nyingma bias and the sources that I have, predominantly written by Nyingma masters about Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo. Khyentse Wangpo was important in the Sakya, is important in the Sakya tradition. So it would actually be up to some Sakya Khenpo or some learned Sakya person to really explain how the role of Khyentse Wangpo in a Sakya context, and the seat of Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo was and is Tsongsa Monastery, which is a Sakya monastery, and he was recognized as a Sakya Tuku. He was recognized as Jigme Lingpa's incarnation, but he was also recognized as an important Sakya incarnation of a Sakya master. And yes, so Khyentse Wangpo then was the recipient of what we call the oral lineages. And again, the Nyingma lineage, as you probably would know, consists really of 2, you could say, streams of transmission. One is the long oral transmission, which is teachings that have been transmitted from one master to the next. And then we have treasure or terma transmission, which is then based on the particular connection of a particular master, particularly to Guru Rinpoche, but also to other Buddhas. This is where I'm going to have to use my power. Let's see here. Ta-ta. On the basis of the particular connection of masters, then they would have the ability to receive teachings directly from either Buddhas or Padmasambhava. And it's also said that, like many of you know, when Padmasambhava first taught in Tibet, seeing that some of the teachings that he held weren't necessarily you could say, useful at the particular time, and so he concealed these to be revealed at a later date. And so you have some of these teachings that were concealed, and Yeshe Tsogyal was very important in the concealing of these treasure teachings all over Tibet. Physical teachings. Also, some teachings written on small parchment, what we call the yellow parchment, or the script of the Dakinis, which were little pieces of paper in Yeshe Tsogyal's hand, which were incomprehensible to most people, except those who then had the karmic fortune to be able to unravel these teachings. We would say that Guru Rinpoche would give the teachings, and then he would say, in the future, on the basis of these particular Dakini scripts, you will remember the teaching, or you'll recollect, you will find particular teachings in particular locations, or you'll just simply, the teachings that I'm giving you here will arise in your mind. So we have various kinds of treasure teachings that then came from Padmasambhava mainly, and which then were revealed at a later date. And so, particularly in the Nyingma tradition, but also you have this actually in the other traditions as well, this notion of recollected revealed treasure teachings. And by the way, let's make it clear, this is not just in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, this is also in the general Mahayana. The entire Prajnaparamita, we say, was revealed by Nagarjuna on the basis of the Buddha putting these teachings into treasure, basically, with the Nagas. So it's not at all something that's particular to Tibetan Buddhism, and it's also not particularly uniquely to the Nyingma tradition. But anyway, Khyentse Wangpo then, on the basis of this vision he had when he was 16, then received, and we would say he received all the tantras, all the oral transmission of all the tantras, both from the new and the old translations. So that's what we generally refer to as Khyentse Wangpo's receiving the karma teachings, the oral lineage. Then we have what's called the earth treasures, sater. And that refers then to teachings that were taken out from the ground. So this is where you have the stories of treasure revealers that go and actually take out objects. It could be sometimes purbas or vajras or actual books, or sometimes medicine, all sorts of strange things. These include then, like I mentioned earlier, when Khyentse Wangpo was traveling to central Tibet, then the teachings on the Semnying Nyalso, the Tsokyi Tuktik, something called the Tsasum Chidu, which he took from a place called Yalong Sheldrak, which is in significant place in central Tibet, Guru Rinpoche place. So these he took out on the basis of simply retrieving them, either retrieving yellow parchments or actually taking out objects or indications that led to what we call establishing the teaching, writing it out in its completion. Then we have something called Yangter, which means a treasure teaching which has been again reconcealed or re-remembered. So it's teachings that Khyentse Wangpo either himself took again once anew, received from Padmasambhava, or from the treasure revealer, the initial treasure revealer, and then establishing that as sometimes the lineages of these particular traditions have been lost. And so Khyentse Wangpo basically re-established it. So we call that Yangter. And these include, for example, the Tsasum Drildup, which was a very important practice among the students of Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo. And down to the present day, this is a teaching Tsongtse Khyentse Rinpoche has taught widely in the West and in the modern world. And then also another Yangter is said to have been the Kando Sangdu. This could possibly also be a memory, but we would say Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo received this very significant Dakini teaching on the basis of his encounter with Guru Chowan, who was a great master in the 13th century. So either on the basis of memory and or encountering Guru Chowan directly, he received this teaching called the Kando Sangwa Kundu. And this teaching came from a great female treasure teacher called Jomo Memo, who is quite significant. And actually, if you look in the Rigpa calendar, if I'm not wrong, then usually that we actually celebrate this on the 10th day of, I can't remember which month, the 7th month or something like that, her entering into, or her, you could say, leaving this world. But this was a very significant treasure revealer who, incidentally, I was just reading about this yesterday, and I mean, Jimba, you should give the mic to you at one point, but I just reading on TBRC that Jomo Memo was the one who first actually revealed as a treasure the Beru Jabak, the great image or the life story of Verochana, which Jimba translated. Anyway, that's a little bit of an aside. But as far as these Yangte goes, then one of these is then the Kando Sangwa Kundu. And then we have Gongte, and these are then teachings like on the basis of receiving these directly from Tangtong Gyalpo, the Druptop Tuktik, the Chime Pama Nyingtik, and also Tsasamersen Nyingtik. Tsasamersen Nyingtik is actually significant because this is Khyentse Wangpo's memory from his life as Jigme Lingpa. Where there was something that Jigme Lingpa never actually established in his Longchen Nyingtik teaching. So we would say that when Jigme Lingpa, in his vision, when Jigme Lingpa had a visionary experience of traveling to the Bodhnath Stupa in Nepal, and there received transmission from the Dharmakaya Dakini, he received from her, I think we say 5 scrolls. And Jigme Lingpa he ate 3 of the scrolls on the spot, and it's on the basis of that we then have that Jigme Lingpa then established the Longchen Nyingtik tradition. But there's 2 of the scrolls apparently that he didn't eat on that occasion in that vision, and these two scrolls then arose. The content of these scrolls arose in the mind of Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo, and it's on the basis of that then that he established what's called the Tsasamersen Nyingtik, the luminous hard essence of the luminosity of the 3 roots. But this actually is then, you could say, a continuation of the Longchen Nyingtik tradition, and so there's a lot of you could say crossover between the Longchen Nyingtik and the Tsasamersen Nyingtik. Then we have what's called recollection, which is then something like the Chechen Nyingtik, where Khyentse Wangpo simply remembered remembered the teaching of Chechen Sengye Wangchu. Then that's what he established as the Chechen Nyingtik. And then also Khyentse Wangpo would have visions in which he received directly teachings from masters that then are regarded as what we call pure visions, Tangnang. So this includes something called Tseyum Chandali, where Khyentse Wangpo had vision of Mandarava. It also refers to Khyentse Wangpo actually augmented Jigme Lingpa's something called the Tiglik Yatchen, which is within the Longchen Nyingtik cycle of teachings from Jigme Lingpa, really the most profound teaching practice. It's called the innermost secret Guru Sadhana, and this is a very, very profound sadhana. Someone like some of the great masters of the Longchen Nyingtik would be very reluctant to give this teaching. But anyway, Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo, and at a time he was in central Tibet, he then had a vision of Longchenpa, and on the basis of that, then he augmented the Tiglik Yatchen with a lot of, you could say, additional liturgies, the amendment practices, and so on, and more extensive Tsok practice. And then finally, the 7th one is what we call Nyenju, which is, you could say, the whispered teaching. And there we say that one time when Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo was staying at this we call Tsongchu Deshik Dripa, which is near Papung Monastery, and which is a sacred location that Khyentse Wangpo opened together with Jamgon Kongtrul Lodorthai. There, Khyentse Wangpo had a vision of being being transported to a stupa in South India called the Shankarakuta, and there he received from Guru Rinpoche and the sort of emanations of Guru Rinpoche. He received all the teachings on what we call the 8 sadhana sections, as well as all the teachings on the peaceful and wrathful Maya Jala. So these, in the context of the Mahayoga teachings, really are what constitutes the Mahayoga Tantra section and the Mahayoga Sadhana section. So this is quite significant for, you could say, all the development stage practices that we have in the Nyingma tradition. Essentially, the teachings on the nature of sacred reality, which is the scope then of the sublime beings, and which is the foundation really of our entire Vajrayana view. On the basis of these teachings on the peaceful and wrathful Maya Jala, and then also directly from Guru Rinpoche receiving the 8 sadhana sections, Guru Rinpoche then established this lineage of Nyenju, the oral whispered lineage, then directly from Guru Rinpoche, in conjunction with these 2 significant teachings, the Maya Jala and the 8 sadhana sections. I'd like to read a few things from Ujin Topgyal's narrative. This is mainly about Chogyal Lingpa. One time in one of the retreat centers in France, then Ujin Topgyal then spoke for quite some length about the life and teaching of Chogyal Lingpa. But in the context of that, he talked a bit about his Chogyal Lingpa's relationship with Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo. And I just want to read a few sections from that. Let's see. Just say a little bit about, here we go, yeah. This reflects on Khyentse Wangpo himself, but we know Chogyal Lingpa was a great treasure revealer. But he wasn't particularly, how to say, he wasn't somebody learned or anything. He just had these encounters with Guru Rinpoche, and Guru Rinpoche at an early stage in his life actually prophesied that he would have a lot of treasure teachings and benefit sentient beings. But on the basis of, then he met Jamgon Kongtrul Lodorthai and shared some of his teachings with Jamgon Kongtrul Lodorthai, and Jamgon Kongtrul Lodorthai says, this is impressive. This seems to be authentic treasure teaching. And he then sent Choling to meet Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo. And it's on the basis then of meeting Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo, from then onwards, then Khyentse Wangpo recognized how the 2 of them had been connected in previous lives. And they also had many teachings that coincided. For example, when they met, then Chogyal Lingpa offered something called the Tukto Bachi Kunsel. And Khyentse Wangpo says, that's interesting. I have a teaching with a slightly different name, but with exactly the same words. And since your teaching was what we call a earth treasure, a sater, then we'll basically join it as that. But that actually means that Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo and Chogyal Lingpa, they had the same teaching, the same treasure teaching, but combining it then with Chogyal Lingpa's, which we say had more blessing because it was an earth treasure, then this is what we presently refer to as Chogyal Lingpa's Tukto Bachi Kunsel. Anyway, Just a few little anecdotes from some of their work, where it said that here it says, at this time, Choling had a vision of Jamyang Khyentse inseparable from Guru Rinpoche. From his two eyes, light came forth, touching a rock in Kela called Nobu Punsum. A big Guru Rinpoche and 7 symbolic letters appeared on the rock. At the same time, Jamyang Khyentse had a vision of Guru Rinpoche pointing at the rock at Kela. He sent a man to Choling with a message that a Terma was there and asking Choling to bring it back to him. The Terma was the Tuktuk Sambal Hundrup, and with it was a small statue called Ngudrup Pelba, which is no different from Guru Rinpoche. And this is OT speaking. Even someone who has committed one of the 5 boundless evil deeds will be liberated upon seeing it. This statue had been Trisong Detsen's practice support. Choling gave it to Kenza since he was the owner. Also included were 7 symbolic letters from which he wrote down the Tuktuk Yishin Nobu teachings of Sambal Hundrup. The 6th of these symbolic letters was an inexhaustible source of Terma teachings. The statue, Terma box, and symbolic letters remain in Sikkim and can still be seen. So, except at one point these things that were in Sikkim, they were taken to Bia, where they are now. And we actually have this it's called the Guru Kutsap, and probably many of you would have seen some of the publications from Khyentse Foundation. Where they've actually printed this beautifully. So this is this statue. We also refer to it as Guru Kutsap. So Guru Kutsap Ngudrup Palba, and this is then the statue that O.T. Rinpoche was referring to. So Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo, like I said, he had traveled and received teachings from some 150 teachers or more, and he collected all these teachings, he held all these teachings, and he then transmitted them to Jamgon Kongtrul Lodutai. And that's the basis of Khyentse Wangpo's teachings to Jamyang Khyentse, to Kongtrul Lodutai, that we have what is known as the 5 treasuries, Dzönga, from Kongtrul. So we have the Rinchen Tetsu, which is primarily the Nyingma teachings, and it's not all of the Nyingma teaching, but just you could say a little selection. It's like an anthology or the cream of all the treasure teachings in the Nyingma tradition, which is then what we call the Rinchen Tetsu. And Kongtrul also wrote down teachings that he received from Khyentse Wangpo, what's known as the Druptap Kuntu and the Gyude Kuntu. And this is also Gyude Kuntu and Druptap Kuntu. I think this was Khyentse Wangpo working with the great Sakya master Lota Wangpo. But anyway, just to say that Jamyang Khyentse had an enormous role with regards to some of the great, the enormous legacy of teachings that we have from that time. So from Kongtrul and Lota Wangpo and others, we have these great collections of teachings which very much come from Khyentse Wangpo. There was something else I just wanted to read here. Yeah, let me just read a little bit more from Ujin Topyal's narrative about Choling, in which Khyentse then is an important central figure. Surrounded by white mountain cliffs, the valley of Meshe is like an open lotus flower, and the foothills covered with meadows and flowers. Meadows and forests. Flowers grow abundantly in summertime, and water flows here and there. In the middle, the heart of the lotus is a huge white rock with a cave in the center called Pema Shelpuk, the Lotus Crystal Cave. The rock, cave, and surrounding area are all white in color. The cave contains many naturally appearing images and letters. Yeshe Tsogyal practiced in a small cave to the left, which has windows which also appeared naturally through the, though they look man-made. The practice caves of Vairocana and Sri Singha, with their naturally appearing thrones, are at the top of the rock. The Pema Shelpuk, so this is the Lotus Crystal Cave, which people called the Ghost Cave, was a cave no one dared visit. Whoever went there was eaten right away. People sometimes saw a one-eyed woman they said was a ghost. A bald-headed man riding on a goat was also seen. Chögyal Lingpa, Jamyang Khyentse, and Jamgon Khyentse went there knowing that they would receive the Dzogchen Desum Terma. So this is what we call the 3 sections of the Great Perfection. This is a well-known and extremely, you could say, secret, well-hidden, only very minimally distributed sort of treasure teaching from Chögyal Lingpa. But he then took this together with Khyentse Wangpo. So, and also Jamgon Khyentse was there. So these 3 masters went there, and people would say, today Khyatser, this is referring to Chögyal Lingpa, is going to take out a terma. The ghost will eat him. Someone else said, since Kenza and Khyentse are here, maybe he will indeed take out a terma. Then a large crowd followed the 3 masters. Just one note, which is significant rather, we have these treasure teachings, many of them, because people naturally were very skeptical about treasure teachings, many of them were purposefully taken out in the presence of large crowds, so that people would see that this was authentic. So some of the most well-known treasure teachings, they were taken out in front of large crowds. So like this one here. So Ujjain Topya Rinpoche continues, many rainbows appeared in the sky. On arriving, they made a big burnt offering. Khyentse offered the Serkyam, the offering to the Dharma protectors, and Khyentse, holding a vajra, sang the Lasum Damdrak song of command to the local deities. People said about Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo, something special must be happening today, because Tuku Rinpoche is doing something. Tuku Rinpoche is how the people in Degi would refer to Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo. Everyone was then told to recite the Vajraguru mantra and to supplicate Guru Rinpoche. The 3 masters and some others went inside the cave, while those who could not fit stayed outside by the opening. As everyone chanted the Vajraguru mantra and the 7-line prayer, Chögyal Lingpa's experience blazed. Normally you couldn't reach it, but he flew up and reached the ceiling. From the ceiling he extracted the Terma box containing Dzogchen Desum. As the Terma object, he took sacred medicine and nectar blessed by Sri Singha, as well as some hairs of Yeshe Tsogyal and Vairocana. The Terma box was wrapped in one of Guru Rinpoche's garments. Choling blessed Khyentse Khyentse and everyone nearby with the Terma box. People now knew he was a true Tibetan. Choling told them, all who came here are most fortunate. If things work out, I have many things left to do. The kindness of Guru Rinpoche and his consort is inconceivable. Jamyang Khyentse continued, Choling is a great Tibetan, a very precious one. His Terma teaching is extremely precious, as is this place. Everyone should make offerings and circumambulations. The 3 of us now have opened the gate to this sacred place. When you die, you will all go to the copper-colored mountain. I promise. So also we have around this time then the occasion of Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo, of Choling, together with Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo and Khyentse, then extracting the teaching of the Lamrim Yeshe Ningpo. Essentially, basically the teaching of the Tukdrup Dorje Chakpotsal. And in there we would say there was the basis of the body was a statue, there was a teaching which was the Lamrim Yeshe Ningpo, and then the basis of the heart was this particular Vajra. But we have here little tanka then that, and actually this is part of a larger tanka which describes the taking of the Lamrim Yeshe Ningpo and all who were present there. So you have up at the top, you have Pema Ösel Dongak Lingpa, Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo, and then next to him on Khyentse Wangpo's left side, you have Chögyal Lingpa's son, who was the incarnation of Namkha Ningpo, Tsewang Drakpa. And then underneath that, down there, holding a vajra and a bell, is Chögyal Lingpa himself with a white robe. And across from him, Chögyal Lingpa's consort, Diki Chödren. So this is a treasure teaching. Oh, this is a tanka describing then the taking of the Lamrim Yeshe Ningpo. And we would say that Chögyal Lingpa extracted the treasure teachings with these objects, but also then the script, the root script of the Lamrim Yeshe Ningpo was then written out. You could say the teaching itself was written out by Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo, and then we also have a commentary then from Jamgu Kongtrul Lodutai. So when we today have this extremely important teaching called the Lamrim Yeshe Ningpo, what is, I think, Khyentse Wangpo says this is worth 40 horse loads or yak loads of scripture. It was essentially something that was established on the basis of these three stages of first Chögyal Lingpa taking out the root, the very short root text, or the short Dakini text, and then on the basis of that, then Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo writing out the root verses, and then Kongtrul writing out the commentary. I'd like at this point then to just read something from, because what we're presenting here is very much, you could say, the greatness of Khyentse Wangpo's activity. But I'd like to also just share something which is quite moving and significant, which is the experience of one of Khyentse Wangpo's students. Because of course, if we look at the students of Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo, they include, great masters like Kongtrul and Choling, the 14th and the 15th Karmapa, Jamgun Lota Wangpo, so many great important masters, Anzum Drupa, Tetun, Sogyal, and so forth. All these great masters. But I'd like to just read from the life, just very briefly, from the life of somebody who was a student of Khyentse Wangpo, and her experience as a student of Khyentse Wangpo. So her name is Dorje Paldren, or what is it again? Sewang Paldren or something. But she's also known as Ayukandro. And this is based on the notes from Chögyal Namkha Nobu when he went and visited this woman when she was 115 years old in the early 1950s. She was born in 1839, and she lived to the ripe old age of 115 or something like that. And Chögyal Namkha Nobu was recommended, actually, while he was studying at Tsongsa, he was recommended to go and receive a transmission of Vajrayogini according to the Sakya tradition from this great Dakini, who had actually spent most of her life in dark retreat. Dark retreat doesn't mean that you sit in the dark, it just means there's no external light coming, but it doesn't mean that you're in the dark. But things work differently then for someone who's practicing like this. But I'd just like to read this because this actually, you could say, has relevance for us as students, just to see the perspective of what the interaction was with Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo. So she writes, and yeah, so she came from a little place with some nomads and in eastern Tibet, and grew up around some practitioners, particularly somebody called Toten Rangrig and his consort, But otherwise, just from a very ordinary family. So she writes, when I was 16 in the year of the Wood Tiger, 1854, my aunt and I went to see Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo. When we arrived, we heard that he was in very strict retreat, but we sent him a message saying we had come from Togden Rangrig. Since we had come from so far away with great self-sacrifice, he agreed to see us. When we met him, he told us that the preceding night he had had a dream which indicated he should teach us. He had decided to initiate us into, and here this is a little bit, how do you say, spelling mistake here. There's a little bit of that, but it's actually the Pama Nyingtik. So he initiated us into he had decided to initiate us into the Pama Nyingtik, his white Tara mind treasure, Gongta. During the initiation, he gave me the name Tsewang Paldron. For more than a month, every time he finished a session, he gave us teachings. I began to get some idea of the meaning of the teaching at this time, and when we returned to Togden's place, I entered a White Tara retreat. So then it continues when, and she actually tells it year by year. By the way, I'd like to just as an aside say there's another great master who was born also, also in 1839. And this is a great Chinese master called Su Yun, Empty Cloud. He was also born same year as Ayukandro, 1839. And just like Ayukandro, he became very ancient. In fact, he lived to be 120. The Chinese students would have heard about him, but you can actually find his life story. It's sitting as a PDF up on the web. And he does the same thing. He says, when I was, 16, 17 in that year and so on, and his entire life story is really just year by year. Anyway, coming back to Ayukandro, then she describes when we were 31, and she says 31 she says, because she had a Dharma friend, Pema Yanki, another nun, or at that stage there were nuns, and they traveled together. So she's very sweet. She instead of talking about herself, she just says me and my girlfriend. When we were 31, in 1869, Tlawang Gompo, Pema Yanki, and I went to see Tsongsa Khyentse Rinpoche with the Khenpo of Dzogchen Monastery called Jigme and 10 of his disciples. Along the way, we visited Gönchen Monastery, where they had the woodblocks for the kanjur. We also visited other interesting places and slowly made our way to see Tsongsa. When we got there to the place called Tashitladze, we discovered that Tsongsa was in Marsha in strict retreat. So Khenpo Jigme and his disciples went off to visit Katok and Payul monasteries. Tlawang Gompo, Pema Yanki and I decided to go to Marsha with the intention of either seeing Tsongsa Jamyang Khyentse Rinpoche or remain in retreat near his retreat place. We made our way there begging, and when we arrived, we found that he was in fact in strict seclusion. We could not even send him a message. So we camped among some rocks below his retreat and began to do some intensive practice ourselves. We were there for more than a month before a monk called Sinom Wampo came by one day to see what we were doing. We told him where we were from and what we had been doing, and that we had hoped to see Khyentse Rinpoche. This became an indirect message to Tsongsa Khyentse Rinpoche. One day, a while later, the same monk came back and told us that Khyentse Rinpoche would see us following his meditation period that morning. We were elated, and when we entered his room, he called me by the name Tsewang Paldron that he had given me, meaning some 15 years earlier, right? He had decided to give us teachings on the Khandro Sangju, the Khandro Sangwa Kunde, between his meditation sessions, since he knew us to be serious practitioners of meditation. But we were not to utter a word of this to anyone, or it would become an obstacle for us. Since in 2 days' time, it would be the anniversary of Jomo Memo's entrance into the body of light, he thought that on that day, we should begin the teachings. So in the meantime, we went out begging to get enough supplies for ourselves and to offer feasts when it was appropriate. We took much teaching from him and still had plenty of time to practice. Then we returned with him to Tsongsa, and along with hundreds of other monks, nuns, and yogis, we received the Nyingtik Yashi. Again, these same 4 sections of the heart essence that that Khyentse Wangpo had received from the Mindraling Jetsunma. We received the Nyingti Gyatso, which took more than 3 months. It seemed to me during that period, I really understood something about Dzogchen. He also gave us teachings from all the schools, the Karma, Terma, Sama, and Nyingma schools, for about 4 months. We attended these teachings and met teachers from all over Tibet and received teachings from them as well. Afterwards, we felt it was time to do some practice. You should read this story of Ayukandros. It's extraordinary. It's in Tsultrim's Women of Wisdom, and it's basically this narrative from Chögyal Lampa Norbu, translated by someone called Barry Simmons, I think, probably from the, I don't know, the Italian. There's a few mistakes here and there, a little bit of mix-ups with names and so on. But anyway, it's a really beautiful story, and she basically practices Chöd, goes around to different cemeteries and so on, and also they hook up with some yogis, her and her girlfriend, and they have an extraordinary life. Really should read it. Anyway, she eventually makes her way back, having traveled through various regions of Tibet and also down in Nepal, Mount Kailash in Western Tibet and so on. She makes her way back to Kham near Tsongsa Monastery. And there she then establishes a little retreat hut where she mainly stays in dark retreat. She writes then, when I was 53 in the year of the Iron Rabbit in 1891, in the 5th month of the day of Padmasambhava, when I was doing practice in the dark, I had a vision. I saw a very clear sphere. Inside it were many dakinis carrying another sphere with the form of Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo inside. I was sure this meant he had been invited to by the dakinis to leave this world of suffering. Although I still had 7 months before the end of the 7 years I had promised myself to complete, I decided it was more important to see him before he left his body. So I left my hut and a few days later went directly to him in Tsongsa, accompanied by my niece. We reached him without obstacles, and he was very kind and taught me a lot. Most importantly, he clarified my practice and by answering all of my questions. When I told him of the visions I had had of him being carried away, I requested that he remain longer. He said that all that is born must die, and that his death could not be delayed. He told me it would be best for me to return to my retreat hut and continue my practice in the dark. With great sadness, I left him and returned to my hut. When I was 54 in the year of the water serpent, 1892, I received the news of his death. At that moment, I decided to stay in retreat for the rest of my life. So I alternated the practice in the dark with the practice in the light. And this is then what she did up until then the 1950s. Mainly just stayed in dark retreat and became a very accomplished master and passed away, leaving great relics behind. But this is someone who then, I can't exactly say this is a typical student, but this is nevertheless you could say an example of someone who was a practitioner student of Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo. So as you will read many places, Khyentse Wangpo had a tremendous impact in terms of teaching. Also, he restored many temples, printed many books, and was also a student, a teacher of many significant masters. I remember Nyosho Khenpo once told us a story about when the Karmapa came to see Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo and requested teachings on what we call the 3 words striking the essence, the 3 words of Garab Dorje. And I can't remember if it was the 14th or the 15th Karmapa, but anyway, when Khyentse Wangpo was to teach this, because that's how it's taught, he actually had to sit on the throne and the Karmapa had to sit on the floor. And this Nyosho Khenpo was telling, this was unheard of, that the Karmapa would, normally people would offer the Karmapa teachings as such, but in this case, Khyentse Wangpo had to be on the throne and the Karmapa sat on the floor. But he had many students, both you could say in a secular context and in a dharmic context. masters from all over Tibet became his students. And it's said that he passed away then on the, there's slightly different, the different life stories on what day he passed away. But we celebrated here on the 21st day of the first month. So let's just say that's when he passed away. But the circumstances when he passed away were quite extraordinary. It said that he wasn't feeling so well. So one morning he chanted some verses of auspiciousness through flowers and says, that's it, I've done everything well. And so on the basis of that, throwing flowers and chanting some verses of auspiciousness, he settled into meditation posture, and later that day he passed away. He prophesied that he would come back in various embodiments, and he did. We have several incarnations of Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo. The first Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo, Tuku, passed away quite early. He was installed at the Khyentse Wangpo seat at Kenza, but he passed away quite early. And then the Tuku from Katok then was moved over to Kenza Monastery, and this is then the one who had really the most impact, you can say, as a Khyentse incarnation, which was Kenza Khyentse Choki Lodra. And it's then from Jamyang Khyentse Choki Lodra that we have the present incarnation, Jamyang Choki Gyatso, our teacher, our Rinpoche. But there were also other Tukus. There's the Papung Khyentse, Bero Khyentse, and there are, if you look in the biographies, there's various other Tukus that we talk about as incarnations of Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo. I'd like us just to have a practice component here. We'll chant a supplication to Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo. So I'll just find that. So this is supplication to the life of the omniscient Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo, called the melodious speech that gathers auspiciousness. So I'll just lead the chant here. We're indebted to Steve Klein and Khenpo Sonam Phuntsok for the English translation. So, knowing all there is to be known, how it is and how it appears, through non-referential compassion, thinking of beings as if your own children, you are the Dharma King who churns the depths of samsara. Noble Khyentse Wangpo, I supplicate at your feet. Soul Father of the victorious ones, noble Manjushri, among your emanations that pervade the Dhamma Dhatu to tame beings through various means, you took birth through intention as the glorious protector of the teachings and beings in this dark age. I supplicate you. In the medicinal valley of the 10 virtues of the 4 regions of Tome, at the miraculous place of taming beings through activity, through the 5 sublime considerations, such as an excellent bloodline and so on, one who appeared as the Nirmanakaya, I supplicate you. The sublime guides who have attained wisdom, with one voice prophesied you as a noble being. Since you transcend the ordinary conduct of all gods and humans, one who is praised as the Lord of beings, I supplicate you. Traveling throughout Yutsang and Greater Tibet, you served under more than 100 masters through the 3 ways of pleasing. Thoroughly searching without weariness for the sublime Dharma, one whose intention is boundless, I supplicate you. When meditating at the cave of Sachin, the mudra of the Idam deity dissolved into your heart, completely liberating the 8 treasures of eloquence, one who has perfected the great power of the 2 knowledges, I supplicate you. Sanskrit logic, arts, medicine, mathematics, poetry, and so on, the 5 areas of knowledge along with their branches, because you have perfected these, one whose fame as learned has pervaded the land of snows, I supplicate you. By merely looking at them, you understood in depth all of the Vinaya, Abhidharma, Majjhimaka, Prajnaparamita, and Tantras of secret mantra. Having attained retention without forgetfulness, one who displays without concealing the qualities of the unchanging wheel, I supplicate you. Graceful with the precious adornment of unstained discipline, you magnetize the minds of fortunate ones with your white smile of meditation, and move the three worlds to delight with your charming music of prajna. Sovereign of the three trainings, I supplicate you. Your Dharma eyes of profound and vast knowledge are free of dust. Teaching, debating, and composing without obstruction or hindrance, you have exhausted the stains of faults in all activities. One in whom gods and humans have faith, I supplicate you. Hiding your own qualities like treasure in the ocean, you praised and respected the meager qualities of others. One who to benefit the teaching and beings gave away as if chaff, even his most cherished possessions, I supplicate you. Possessing an ocean of recollection, meditation, and clairvoyance, although qualified as an object for the offerings of the three worlds, you are without pride or arrogance. One who suffered great pains for the sake of a single word of sublime Dharma, I supplicate you. Administration and the like related to superficial Dharma. Since you never relied on such ordinary activities, like a fearless lion, your conduct was perfect. One beyond compare on this earth, I supplicate you. All the rivers of scripture, explanation, and pith instructions, without exception, of the tradition of the 8 great chariots of the practice lineages, are gathered in the ocean of your heart. One who continued the life nadis of the teaching through the flow of the stream of ripening liberation, I supplicate you. Great charioteer, the complete teachings of Shakyamuni, you are the friend who impartially tames all those to be tamed of all traditions. One who is the crown jewel, I supplicate you. Performing all activities solely for the benefit of others, you possess the manifold wondrous signs of benefiting all those with whom you are connected, and creating conceivable great accumulations of merit. Noble sovereign of the 10th Bhumi, I supplicate you. The Udayana Guru and Consort, noble Vimalamitra, the ancestral Dharma kings, Chuan, the omniscient one, and so on. One on whom blessings and accomplishments are bestowed by the Gurus of the Idam deities and Udam deities of the lineages of the 9 yanas, I supplicate you. The great compassionate one, the uncle and nephews, along with the lineage holders, and moreover the numerous scholars and siddhas of the noble land and Tibet, having bestowed on you the empowerments and entrusted the tantras in person, in experiences, and in dreams, one who has been cared for again and again, I supplicate you. Particularly Acharya Manjushri Mitra, bestowing the secret treasury of Sutra and Tantra, blessed you as the wisdom body, one in whom the complete knowledge and realization has been awakened as inseparable, I supplicate you. While entering the mandala of the gathered intentions, by the blessings of the sublime Sota and Yeshe Wangchu, you purify the impure aggregates and dhatus, transforming them into the 3 secrets of Vajrasattva, supreme all-pervading Lord of the families, I supplicate you. Cared for by the Vajra Queen, the mother of the victorious ones, the phenomenal world arose for you as infinite pure mandalas, and you clearly beheld the mandala of the Vajra body. One who is supreme among siddhas, I supplicate you. Attaining the gathering of the Dakinis in the outer and inner 3 abodes, you increased the wisdom of the 3 blazes, and perfected the auspicious coincidence of the 3 conducts. Great sovereign of yogis, I supplicate you. Through the awakening of the karmic imprints of your numerous successions of lives, countless rivers of the scriptures of Sutra and Tantra, whose transmissions were rare, supreme representations and sacred substances gathered in the ocean of your life story, I supplicate you. You obtained the 6 transmission lineages, the earth and mind treasures, pure visions, the oral lineages, the recollected teachings, and the rediscovered treasures, the royal seat of the precious 7 authorizations. Universal King of Dharma, I supplicate you. Mastering your own perceptions and subjugating the power of others, you accomplished the 4 kinds of activities even without exertion. One whose commandments are fulfilled as entrusted by the Dakinis, Dharma protectors, and powerful haughty ones, I supplicate you. Through the countless turnings of the wheel of the profound and vast Dharma, you ripened and liberated millions of fortunate beings, embodiment of compassion, possessing inconceivable sublime qualities, I supplicate you. When you manifested this completion of the perceptions in this world, you became one with the spacious mind of Vimalamitra, the crowned ornaments of the 500 Panditas, the basis of emanation as the pure and cool 5 peaks, I supplicate you. Again, according to the perception of beings to be tamed through numerous emanations of body, speech, mind, quality, and activity, you fulfill the wishes of the teachings and beings. One whose benefit to beings is limitless, I supplicate you. When you, the protector, attain Buddhahood as the all-seeing guide, may I be endowed with the fortune of supreme enlightenment as your first disciple. and serve you as that victorious one. By the power of supplicating one pointedly with unwavering devotion, from this life until enlightenment is attained, not separating from the glorious sublime Guru, may I be cared for and actualize the qualities in manifest form. Serving accordingly through the means of pleasing, receiving the essence of the mind, and perfecting practice, thoroughly accomplishing the qualities of the stages and paths, may I attain the state of Vajradhara, not meeting with obstacles in practicing in accordance with the Dharma, through having gained mastery over scripture and realization, spreading the teaching of the Buddha throughout the world, may I be equal to you, the King of Dharma. So this supplication to Khyentse Wangpo was written by Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo, and then there's some stanzas at the end that was added by Tongse Khyentse Chogi Lodro, his re-embodiment. So a little bit about Khyentse Wangpo's legacy, and I'm not going to dwell on that too much. Many of you know about this, but there is some significance really in terms of this Khyentse Wangpo's own, you could say, teachings. They say the impact he had, like I've already described, and also very significantly, Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo commanded one of his students, Mipam Rinpoche, to write down what he called the view of our tradition, and referring then to the Nyingma tradition, so that there's a clear understanding exactly how the Nyingma presentation of what we call the sutra teachings, you could say all the teachings that are based on rationality, the science of the teaching, so to speak, according to the particular way that they're taught in terms of the Nyingma view. So we have an extraordinary heritage of teachings that come from another emanation of Manjushri, the great Jamgon Mipam. And it's then with Jamgon Mipam then that we have, you could say, the presentations of the particular view of the Nyingma, and the view that we find in the middle way teachings, the Madhyamika, and also in the Pramana teachings that then come down to us. But this is on the, you could say, on the basis of the command from Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo. Khyentse Wangpo's teachings have been translated. Many sadhanas have been translated. We have references to Khyentse Wangpo born in Tibet from Chogyam Trungpa. People like Eric Pema Kunsang has translated many of Khyentse Wangpo's works. People like Ani Jimba has translated many different works. Matthew Ricard has also translated a lot of Khyentse Wangpo's material in the Nalanda Translation Committee. And also the late Ani Jimba, the late Ani Lodro started translating the life of Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo. Didn't complete it, but we have a wonderful life story from Matthew Akister. Matthew did this sort of as an aside because he was working on this large work of his called Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo's Guide to Central Tibet. And just as it was helpful as he was doing that, he also translated Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo's life story. But we now have then these two majorly works from Matthew Akister. One is the Life of Khyentse Wangpo, and also this enormous work called Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo's Guide to Central Tibet. An absolutely incredible work, and this is thanks to Khyentse Foundation. This actually was printed, but it's a remarkable resource in terms of seeing, you could say, the sacred landscape of Tibet and the journeys that Khyentse Wangpo undertook. Also, last year, when it was the 200th anniversary of Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo, then Tsongsa Monastery in Tibet sort of republished Khyentse Wangpo's works and everything associated with it, an enormous undertaking. There's also something which then has to be announced, and for that reason I'm going to put Dolma Gunther on, if I can figure out how to do this. Let's just see here. I'm going to give the spotlight over to Dolma. Actually, I'm going to completely remove my own spotlight. And so Dolma, thank you very much for joining us here today. And Dolma will now present the Khyentse Vision project. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm not going to speak for too long because I think that Jakob has set this wonderful backdrop to this project. But I just wanted to say I feel incredibly privileged to be able to announce with you guys today that our website has launched on this auspicious day. And it's a very simple website because the project is still under development. We're still in our very formative phases. So we've been going for about 6 months now. And it's very much still a process of setting the foundations of the project, and all the workflow processes and recruitment and all of this kind of thing is underway. But today we have a website to share with you, which has a little bit more information about the project scope and the collaborative efforts involved in the project. And then over the next couple of weeks, the website itself will grow a little bit more, and there'll be extra pages added, such as a team page. So this is all very much a work in progress. And but I feel very grateful, especially to Marianne Lepage from Khyentse Foundation, who has put a lot of work into helping design this website. So I can actually share it with you guys now, if I can share my screen.
Yeah, you should be able to.
Okay. So this is the website as it is now. Of course, this will be changing as we go. And so far, we don't have a reading room yet. So the reading room itself will take probably another 4 or 5 months to develop. It's quite a complex web development project to create a reading room. But we thought it was important to have this as a landing page so that everybody can go to our website and see some more information about what the website is. There's also a wonderful video, which I encourage you all to look at, of Rinpoche introducing the project and just talking a little bit about how important Khyentse Wangpo's works are for the world. The project itself is aiming to translate the complete works of Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo. So this includes all of those wonderful translations that Jakob already mentioned, all of the existing translations, and there's probably about 80 to 100 existing translations already of Khyentse Wangpo's works. So we'll be gathering those works, perhaps re-editing them a little bit to conform to our in-house style, and then republishing them so that there's one platform that is kind of like the hub for all of Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo's works. To translate all of his works, however, is going to take a long time. He's written over 16,000 pages of writing, and there's actually more than that. So there's 2 collections that we'll be working with. One is the Sungbung, and the other one is the Kababdun, which is the collection, all of those wonderful termas from the 7 kinds of treasure teachings that Jakob spoke about. So there's two different collections that we'll be translating. But on top of that, there's actually a lot more that Khyentse Wangpo was involved in collating and collaborating with and writing, such as the Druptam Kuddu collection and others. So it's an enormous project. Our projection is that it might take around 30 years to complete. So there's a lot of text to still be translated. At the moment, we're building our team of translators, and we have a wonderful team of editors already. And soon on the website, we will have a page that will encourage people to apply to become translators if you're interested and you have a lot of skill translating. And one of the exciting things about this project, which I'll show you on the About page, so I've spoken about the project scope, but there's also a very exciting aspect of the project, which is an in-house translator training program. And this is really to take translators who are already very, very proficient, so who've already studied Tibetan in institutes such as Ramsunish Institute and so on, but to just give them that extra skill necessary to be able to really, really effectively and confidently translate the kind of material that's in the Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo Kabum. The collection itself ranges enormously. So within Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo Sungbum, it ranges from medicinal texts to philosophical commentaries, to lots of sadhanas, prayers, praises, biographies, geographical texts, histories. There's lots of meditational instructions, pith instructions, lots of Dzogchen instructions. It's an enormous, enormous variety of extraordinary texts that Khyentse Wangpo authored. And because of this, it's, as you can imagine, relatively complicated to gather the right expertise to be able to translate all of these various different genres to a level that's really, really excellent. So we have this very ambitious aim to be able to embody the nature of Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo himself as much as we possibly can. He was such an extraordinarily erudite master, but also such an accomplished, amazing yogi. And he really kind of married these two qualities of a true practitioner with an extraordinary scholar. So that's a very big aim and goal for the website and for the project itself, to try and emulate and to try and follow in his footsteps and be worthy of his legacy that Jakob was telling about. So it's just the beginning days. We've still got a lot of work to go. I'll just show you also the collaboration page. Collaboration, as you can imagine, is a very important aspect of our project. The team page will be coming soon, by the way, so maybe over the next couple of days. We don't have that yet. But we do have a collaboration page because Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo himself, as Jakob has been talking about, was such a huge collaborator, and he worked with so many other great masters. He had so many extraordinary students of his own who then went on to become great masters themselves. And as Jakob said, he was so instrumental in making the Rime movement really, really developed, and his entire life really was a dedication to the Rime movement. So we have a wonderfully eminent advisory committee here with all kinds of experts and blessings and experience that we are calling upon to get advice for this project. So this is our advisory committee. When the team page is developed, you'll see also there's a project consultant group, which is slightly different from the advisory committee in that the project consultant group is a little bit more hands-on with the project, and will be, hopefully, all of our project consultants will be at some point running workshops for our translator trainees. So that page is coming, like I say, but so far this is just a little blurb on our collaboration. And one of the most important collaborations that we'll be undertaking is more or less a partnership with Sedra Foundation, because Sedra Foundation are going to be publishing the new Tibetan collections that are coming out of Dzongsa. And that includes the Sungbum and the Kababdun. So they'll be publishing the Tibetan on their website. So our translations will be linking through to the source text, to the original Tibetan text, very closely with Sedra Foundation. Sedra Foundation also has a wonderful intention to publish the entire Tibetan collection of all the masters of the Khyentse lineage. And Dzongsa Khyentse Rinpoche has spoken about our project that, you know, once we've managed to translate all of Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo's works, perhaps we can also become a hub for the translation of all the masters of the Khyentse lineage as well. So there's lots of wonderful collaborations happening. 84,000, of course, has given us a lot of help. Padmakara Translation Group, Dzongsa Monastery, which is where these wonderful new editions are coming out of. Lotsawa House has been extraordinarily helpful. Adam Piercy has a lot of Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo translations on his website already, and he's very kindly and graciously given us permission to republish them on our site. And of course, we'll be linking through to all of these original translation sites as well, with the original publications as well. And then there's more of a list here. Rangjung Institute, I should mention, because they're helping us, collaborating with us to get our translator training program up and running. And they've also very kindly agreed to work with us to help our trainees attend a course at Rangjung Institute in the latter half of this year. So that will be a course that we very much focused on the kind of material that you find in the Khyentse Wangpo Songbong. So there's lots of really exciting collaborations coming out of this project, which is truly wonderful. So that's the site as it is at the moment, but please do keep checking the website because there will be updates coming over the next few days and over the next few months. And with each new update, we will do a little announcement on our Facebook and Instagram pages. So you can follow us on Facebook and Instagram. If you go to the website, you'll find the buttons there. And we will have a news update as well. And there's also a contact us if you want to contact the project to ask us any questions. So that's it. That's all I'm going to say on the project and on the website. But if you do have any particular questions that you would like to ask me right now, perhaps you can put a comment in the comment section or raise your hand maybe, or that probably there's too many of us to raise hands. But if you have any questions, please write them down in the chat and perhaps Jakob and I can address them. I should say I didn't actually introduce myself. I'm the project director of the Khyentse Vision project. And so far we have a team of around 12 wonderful in-house people working already for us. And you'll see who they are once the team pages go up. So thank you so much, everyone. Please do check out the website. And also I wanted to say a special thank you to Khyentse Foundation, because it's entirely due to the kindness and generosity of Khyentse Foundation that this project is able to even have been conceived of, let alone happen. And Khyentse Foundation, of course, relies on all of you guys and all of your generosity. So I'd like to encourage you to keep supporting Khyentse Foundation, because they are our support and our project's success completely relies on the generosity of Khyentse Foundation. And of course, it also relies most importantly on the wonderful blessings and the vision of Dzongse Khyentse Rinpoche, who is the embodiment of Khyentse Wangpo and who is guiding us at every step along the way with this project. So thank you so much, everybody. Stay in touch. We'll keep updating you with news. And yeah, I look forward to sharing this extraordinary wealth of the treasure of Dharma that is hidden in these wonderful collections of Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo, making them available to all of the English-speaking world, and then eventually also into other languages as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dolma. And just like to say, as someone was pointing out, the website is khyentsevision.org. And there's a few questions coming in here about who can translate and so forth. And I would say just go to the website, and I'm sure you can contact Dolma and the team via the website.
Actually, Jakob, maybe let me say something about that, just to stop an avalanche of requests coming in, which I will have to personally deal with. So I'm preempting that. At the moment, we're only accepting applications from translators who really are proficient translators. So you already need to have quite a high degree of publication experience, high degree of Tibetan to become a translator for this project. And the reason being is that these texts are really, really difficult texts. You need to be a very proficient translator with a lot of experience to be able to translate the kind of material that's in Khyentse Wangpo Songbong. So in terms of our actual translators who we will contract to translate text for us, really it's a select group of translators who do have quite a lot of experience, prior experience translating. However, if you are interested in joining our translator training program, you still do need a proficient level of Tibetan for that, but perhaps not such a huge amount of publication experience behind you. Translator training program is full already for this year. So we have 10 trainees already signed up, but we will be taking a new intake of translator trainees each year. So if you want to apply to that, you can definitely contact the email address that's on the website. And over the next few days, we will also be putting up a contact us page that will have a specific application form for both translators for the project and translator trainees for the translator training program. So if you want to hold off for a couple of days until that's up, there will be more information about those two processes and about everything that's required, such as what you need to upload, such as your CV and translation samples and that kind of thing. So I encourage you to hold off for a little bit, just to make it a little bit easier for us, because as you can imagine, this period in the project's formation is extraordinarily busy and arduous, and there's so much going on. So if you can bear with me and practice patience and just wait for a little while until the contact page is up, then that might answer some of your further questions around this.
Thank you so much, Dolma. Initially, this was just a small little thing where I was going to say something about Khyentse Wangpo, maybe do some practice together with a few of us. And I said, Dolma, you should come along and say something about the Khyentse Vision project. And then when I announced it, I actually wanted to take my own name out of the whole thing. And then actually, I just mentioned Dolma Gunther will be there. It sounded as if it was that it all landed on Dolma, but I'm very grateful that you could show up, and thank you so much for this really substantial introduction. I know you've been up till early this morning with meetings, so thank you so much. And it's so clear what you just said and so comprehensive. So that's really, really helpful. And this is an extraordinary step in then what we could call the legacy of Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo, that this is happening. This is Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo's work and benefit reaching the entire world. This is very, very important. I'd like to conclude then with the long life supplication for the present embodiment of Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo, Jamyang Khyentse Rinpoche. But also keeping in mind, and what Dolma was also mentioning, we are so indebted to the many patrons, the many people who over the years have supported Rinpoche with his work, enabled his vision to become reality. So also with this long life prayer to Rinpoche's life, we're also dedicating this to the many people who have supported Rinpoche over the years, and to the long life of the teaching as well, and to the happiness and ultimate liberation of all sentient beings. So let's see here. Om Swasti. Skullgirl and Lotus Heruka, conqueror of Maras, whose deathless natural wisdom mind has transformed the root of existence into great Vajra bliss, subjugator of apparent phenomena, please shower the blessings of immortality. Fearless Lord of speech, you are the Vajra holder of the profound secret treasures of wisdom and compassion, victorious one of all pervading activity. May your three secrets remain indestructible and everlasting. As vowed by Vimla Mitra and King Trisong Detsen, to constantly manifest out of compassion, you came as a warrior to protect the doctrine and all beings in this dark age. May you remain forever as the unchanging Vajra essence. May the virtuous seed of this supplication, warmed and moistened by the undeceiving two truths, ripen into a splendid fruit that beautifies the three worlds with utmost auspiciousness. So thank you all of you for joining us here in this program today. All the very best wishes, good health, good practice. Stay in touch. Take care.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Bye.
Could we dedicate the meditation?
Take care, Jakob.
All right. By this merit, may all attain omniscience. May
all attain
from
omniscience.
the stormy waves, sickness and death, from the ocean of
Fish of samsara, may all beings be free.
May I free all beings.
Jakob, I'm just going to add a little prayer in Tibetan that's an auspicious prayer for the propagation of Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo's lineage.
Please do.
I only know it in Tibetan, so I'm just going to say it in Tibetan. Ganjan rimetempa getsada musakabadan jikolojo jampayo Khyentse Wangpo ringla tempra darje tashisho.
Sure.
Tashisho.